Thank you all. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to the Planning Committee. And first item on our agenda is any apologies for absence. Are there any?
I am not any, Chairman, no.
Good.
Everybody's
Right.
present.
So then we will now read out the attendance call.
Yeah, Councillor Anderson.
Yes, present.
Councillor Black.
Present.
Yeah. Councillor Evans.
Present.
Councillor Gibbard.
Yes, present.
Councillor Mary Jones.
Present.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Richard Lewis.
Present.
Paulette Smith. Cool. Des Thomas.
Yes, present.
Linda Taylor Lloyd.
What's happening there?
Linda's in her garden. I think someone might be cutting their grass.
Linda's dog.
Mike. Yeah.
Done now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next item then, item 2 is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Are there any?
Yes, Chair. Can I declare prejudicial interest in item 3 on the applications land at Upper Bank and Antong Way?
Yeah, and I shall be declaring a personal interest knowing the applicant on the same item. Any others? No. Okay, right. Item 3 then is the minutes of the previous meeting. We've got to approve and sign those. There you will find pages 1 to 6. So shall we go to page 1, page 2, 3, 4, page 5, and page 6. Somebody move them as a true record, please.
Move.
Yeah, thank you. Right, and then item 4, is any items for deferral or withdrawal? No, Chair. There are none. Okay, thank you. So then we move on to item 5. It's to determine the planning applications under the Town and Country 1930. 1990, sorry. And the first item on our agenda there is, you see on page 10, is Carn Nicholas Farm in Bonamine. Andrew, is that yours?
Thank you, Chair. Ian's going to put my presentation up now, which should take over the full screen, and I'll talk you through it then, members. And obviously, if you've got any questions, we'll take those at the end. I don't know whether everyone is aware, but obviously, if you've seen the update sheet, I'll just run through that very quickly. Since the report was prepared, the local ward member for Bonamine, Councillor Mandy Evans, has written in to express her support for the proposals. In summary, the letter states that the community support the application for this important renewable energy development that would serve circa 3,000 households annually and can see the benefits associated with it in light of the climate emergency declared by the council. The proposal would retain the existing field boundaries and add to the hedgerow and woodland landscape elements, aiding biodiversity with full consideration given to the impact of construction, traffic, which is welcome. So the full letter is attached as Appendix A to the update sheet. The officer report notes that the council's ecologist was due to undertake a test of likely significant effect, which would be reported verbally at committee. That's outlined on page 49. This has now been completed and an appropriate assessment has subsequently been undertaken. This concludes that there are no significant effects anticipated on the surrounding designated SAC or SSSI, subject to mitigation, including that the submitted KEMP and drainage strategy are implemented and adhered to throughout all the project phases, and that's attached as a condition. So those, the test of likely significant effect and the habitat regulations assessment are attached as appendices B and C. In terms of other updates, the Council's ecologist has provided comments and originally requested additional survey efforts with regards to great crested newts and reptiles. However, since the update sheet was prepared yesterday and following further dialogue on the comments provided by Natural Resources Wales, the ecologist considers that the additional issues can be covered by condition. So on the update sheet, I have obviously outlined what condition 8 was going to be amended to. It has 4 bullet points on the version you see. We're going to add another bullet point to refer to the protection and precautionary working methods to be followed for great crested newts in the biodiversity management plan. And we would also add an advice note with regards to great crested newts as well. So I will go into the actual proposal now and talk you through it. Firstly, we've got the site plan. So just in terms of background, the application is being reported to Planning Committee due to the scale of the site, which is 19.3 hectares. The application seeks permission for a 9.99 megawatt solar farm at Carn Nicholas Farm, along with associated grid development. In terms of background, the previous permission has been granted for a 5 megawatt solar farm. So that is also shown on the slide as well in the bottom right hand corner. And you'll see 4 stars on there, which indicates the additional fields that have been included in this increased application. Councillor Thomas has raised a query about the impact on skyline. A small area in the lower half of the southwest field, what has been indicated in land that Skyline would want going forward. However, this is part of the extant permission, and as I said, it's not in council ownership and it's not considered that this proposal would fetter that, given that context. So if you can go on to the next slide, please, Ian. This is just a site overview taken from Google Maps. So the farm and the adjacent property, Rose Cottage, are within the hedged fields to the northwest of the yellow field in the centre of the screen. The site extends up to the woodland on the western side of the screen, and the land use in the application area has a low agricultural land classification grading of 3B to 4. So the land is currently cut for silage. The solar arrays avoid fields on the southern scarp slope edge of Kilvey Hill. These were deemed to be more visible. So you can go on to the next one, please, Ian. This is just a typical example of the solar panels, which they have a clearance of approximately 700 mil, and they go to a height of 2.165 meters. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ian. Okay, so this is the layout of the farm. There will be a temporary construction storage area in the top left-hand corner. The construction work's expected to last for 18 weeks. The solar panels themselves are indicated as the black rows on the very light green background. There is the mid-green to the south of the farm building and northern edge are proposed woodland block planting. And the proposals include 165 linear metres of new hedgerow and approximately 0.3 hectares of woodland planting, which would remain after the lifetime of the development. The pink dotted line, which goes off to the northeast, is the cable route, and this is previously approved with a substation on Cochacum Road, and the blue lines are swales and the yellow circles are archaeological exclusion areas. So if you can go to the next one, please, Ian. This is a photo montage basically taken from Kevin Hengoyd looking south towards Kilvey Hill. So what you've got on the top is you can see the consented development area, and on the bottom you've got the additional fields which wrap around to the right and on the southern, the northern edge, but obviously at the bottom of the screen as we're looking back here. So it would be more visible from Kevin Hengoyd. We'll have a look at the next slide, please, Ian. So this is the view as you come along Fabian Way into Swansea. Obviously you can see Kilvey Hill and the mast on top of the hill to the left of the lighting column on the left. You can see it would be visible from there, but so would the extant permission. So the additional arrays, additional panels will be on the northern side and not, there's no increase in terms of the visual impact from there. So there's no change in that regard. So in terms of consultations, we've had no objections from any neighbours and no objections from any statutory or internal consultees. We've obviously got to consider that the previous scheme is still extant and is a material consideration. It's not considered that the proposal would prejudice any local search areas for renewables, and it's considered to be necessary infrastructure in terms of its location within the countryside. It is accepted that the visual impact would be greater than the previous scheme when viewed from the north, but this would reduce over the lifetime of the development as the mitigation planting grows. So the proposed scheme would offer double the amount of energy generation, and policy states that this significant weight should be afforded to renewables in order to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. So the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got speakers here now. I've got first is Councillor White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The query I had was on page 26 of the report in regards to our full consultations being concluded in regards to the footpaths and the right-of-ways. I know the highways was in the report saying that clearly there was still some issues to resolve. And the highways officers confirm whether all negotiations and consultations in regards to the footpaths in respect of health and safety for, especially with vehicles coming in and out of that entrance. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, come back to that. Okay, and Councillor, third one, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 74, paragraph 345 under ecology, he's saying the surveys are two years out of date. Will these surveys be done, and can we guarantee that the surveys will be protecting bats, nesting birds, and more importantly, American falcons, because they're endangered species? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got a third hander, but I can't see who it is. Who's that?
I think it's me, is it?
Right, okay, thank you. Right, carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say I'm a little concerned about the visual impact, but those photos are very useful. So just to confirm, there will be sort of barrier planting, trees, hedgerows around it, which over time will reduce that impact. Is that correct? They'll grow up sort of high enough to not be able to see it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak?
Yeah, question, please.
Oh, carry on. Yeah.
Sorry. The lifespan of the scheme is, according to the report, 40 years, and then it should be restored to its original condition. What guarantee? What have we got? Is there a bond retained to that extent, in case the company went out of being, for instance?
Okay, we'll come back, get an answer for that hopefully. Any others wish to speak? No? No.
Thank you, Chair. I'll run through those in reverse order to start off with, because then I might pass it over to the Highways Officer in case he wants to add anything further. Councillor Thomas, in terms of the lifespan of the development, there is a condition attached recommending we would require details of the decommissioning of the site after 40 years. So that has to be agreed within 1 year of the site being commissioned. Obviously, we could look to enforce that condition if it's not undertaken at that time. There's no provision for a bond. There's no requirement in local policy or national policy to require a bond for these sort of solar farms. We didn't put one on there previously, and we haven't put one on any of the other solar farms that we've allowed. With regards to the barrier planting, it would grow over time. So we have taken advice from the landscape officer. They think after about 5 years it will provide a decent barrier. That's not to say that it's not going to be visible, but it is to mitigate and break up the visual impact of the proposals going forward. Councillor Anderson, with regards to the query on page 74 about the surveys, I believe that's on the next planning application, and I will come back to it in due course, because that is to do with Cymru to Cairo Quarry, I believe. far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll come back to that. And Councillor White, with regards to the highways and the comments of the public right of way, we've obviously got to be mindful of the previous permission here, which allowed that access to be utilised in. They did agree a construction traffic management plan with highways. As a result of this application, highways have requested additional works which will be undertaken. That will be secured by a condition. In terms of, as I said, it's not considered that there's any justification for a contribution towards improvements to the public right of way. They weren't looked at previously. And as you can see on one of the conditions, there is a requirement for a dilapidation survey to ensure that the current condition of those routes are looked at this stage, and then following the development, so that they can then be reinstated, so that, as I said, they won't be any worse than they are now. And I don't know whether Matt in Highways wants to add anything further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Matt, did you want to add?
Yes. Well, we've had a discussion with the developer about the public rights of way. Obviously, there was a condition on the previous consent for a construction traffic management plan. And obviously, as this is a larger development, the previous CTMP would be the minimum that we would expect. So for the length of the public right of way, there will be a minimum 2 metre wide segregated route for pedestrians to separate them from any construction traffic through the period of construction.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to speak? Then, as the other Bonamine Ward councillor, can add my weight to Councillor Evans's letter, which I think is absolutely excellent, and she makes the point that as part of our commitment to tackling climate change, etc., and making sure that it's green energy that we are supplying the country with. So I would support that letter. So unless anyone else wishes to speak, you can see you see the recommendation there on page 53 is one of approval. We will now, yeah, thank you, Gareth.
Call each councillor out then. Cyril Anderson.
Approve.
Peter Black.
Approve.
Will Evans.
Approve.
Louise Gibbard.
Approve.
Mary Jones.
Approve.
Mike Lewis.
Approve.
Richard Lewis.
Approve.
Paulette Smith. Councillor Smith, are you there? Are you muted? Councillor Des Thomas.
Approve.
Linda Taylor Lloyd. And Mike White.
Approve.
Yeah.
9.
So there were a few missing there, but
Yeah, there's a couple missing, so we're
okay. Yeah, shall we try contact those that we missed?
whether are they all on mute though?
Can you make sure you're unmuted, please?
It was Councillor Paulette Smith and Councillor Linda Taylor Lloyd.
Approve.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Approve.
Paulette Smith is there. She is muted.
Paulette, could you unmute? Oh, she is. Yeah. I don't forget to record my vote. Yeah. Thank you. No?
Councillor Paul Lloyd.
Yes, approved.
There we go. We've got 11, so whether Paulette.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Approve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we are. I think that's all. Thank you very much. That's carried.
End, yeah.
Yeah.
Unanimous.
And then we'll move on to the next one, which is item 2 on page 58, probably the kind of quarry. And that's Andrew again, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the provision of landscaping and other infrastructure within the quarry basin at Cymru's Cairo Quarry. There are no updates on this one. It's being reported to Planning Committee as the outline application was submitted with an environmental statement. So if you go on to the first one, please, Ian. This is the site plan. Outline planning permission was granted an appeal for the cessation of the quarry use and the construction of up to 300 dwellings in January 2018. So the reserved matters site is edged in red, with the outline permission area edged in blue. And you can see two little green blocks within the red, which are community buildings, which I'll go on to explain in a moment. This is the third reserved matter submission. 149 dwellings have already been approved on site, and this site is anticipated as phase 6, and they reckon that works will commence in March next year. So if you can go on to the next one, please, Ian. This is just sort of a high-level master plan, really. What they're proposing is a multifunctional space with open spaces, walk-in routes, formal play areas, and areas dedicated for the management of the landfill, such as the attenuation lagoon. The proposal includes access road down into the quarry basin, and permission has recently been granted for 2 community hub buildings within the quarry basin itself. If you can go on to the next one, please, Ian. These are just more detailed proposals, really. So you can see the 2 community hub buildings in the middle. You've got proposals include a car park to the south of the community hub with parking for 14 cars, including 2 for disabled users. There's a path leading around the open space, a specific area for dog walking on the west side. Then there's a bit of a kickabout area, and to the southwest of the community buildings, there will be a local equipped area of play and local area of play as well, fenced in. In summary, there are no neighbour objections to the proposals and no objections raised by consultees. The principle of development was agreed at outline stage, and the existing woodland feature will be retained. There will be a residential phase in the bottom, so if you can see just to the south of the site in the yellow band, there's 2 lines fronting onto the development, so that will be future phases which will face onto it. And the road would serve the community area and the future phase, but there are no objections from the local highways authority. So the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. I will just, as I said, obviously Councillor Anderson raised questions as part of the last application, but I'll just address those now just so everyone is clear. In terms of peregrine falcons, we do have a condition on there, which is condition 7 on the consent for acquiring further works. We have had an environmental management plan which covers it as well, so it's a bit of a belt and braces approach, but we think that's acceptable. The surveys were carried out in April 2014, so they're just beyond the 2-year period in terms of what's recommended by best practice. There isn't any legislation that says that is what the period is, but that is, you know, the rule of thumb that is generally accepted. In light of the exceptional circumstances we're in, COVID-19, this application would have gone originally to the April committee if it was held, and therefore they would have been in time at that time. Natural Resources Wales have advised that they are willing to accept surveys at the moment for up to 3 years, and the authority consider that it's fit for purpose in this respect. So we wouldn't be asking for them to undertake any further surveys. So that's it all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I've got one hand up there, is Councillor White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Question really, page 7, page 76, regards to science, regards to stability. Section that we aren't going to talk about any issues regarding water being polluted from the site, as it was a master stroke of an active case of water.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor White, I didn't get any of that. You were cutting in and out.
Yeah.
Yes, it's relating to page 76 and
Okay.
the issue of groundwater pollution. Have this now been remedied that we won't have any further concerns regarding this issue?
Right, thank you, Chair. That was an issue, I believe, that was raised by Natural Resources Wales. In terms of they were concerned where a stormwater goes, the outfall was. Our council's drainage officer is satisfied that it's not an issue. and in any event, they would have to comply with the relevant permit regulations as well. There's an environmental permit for the site, so we don't consider it's an issue that needs to be considered further as part of this planning application.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Right, and just before we move on, I got to clarify for Peter Black. Yeah, go on. For Andrew, I mean the survey was carried out 2018, if I'm.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was got Councillor Black and.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 80, there's reference to the land contamination issues, and the landscaping shouldn't compromise the engineering cap. Who is responsible for monitoring that? Would that be the council or would that be NRW? I can't hear you. Sorry, is Andrew replying because he's on mute?
Sorry.
Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. There's a condition on there requiring details to be agreed with Natural Resources Wales. So in the first instance, we'd need to make sure that what they're proposing is acceptable. If an issue arose, then it would, as I said, we would have the opportunity to investigate and planning control in terms of a breach of condition, but it might be something that NRW would also have control over as part of the environmental permit as well.
I think, Chair, that as NRW clearly have more capacity to monitor this site and also a long history with this site, it must be best if that agreement left that monitoring to them rather than us. I think our planning control has got very limited resources, but I'm anxious that that engineering cap is, the integrity of that engineering cap is maintained.
Yeah, understandable.
I've got another hand over, I can't see what it is. It's actually suffers it. Yeah. Yeah.
There's nobody else.
No others. No. Anyone else wish to speak? No. Okay. Thank you. Then we will see that the recommendation there is one of approval. So we now call out the list again.
Start with the Chairman. Councillor Paul Lloyd.
Approve.
Cyril Anderson.
Approve, Chair.
Peter Black.
Approve, Chair.
Will Evans.
Well,
Councillor Evans, are you on mute?
Approve.
Thank you.
Louise Gibbard.
Approve.
Mary Jones.
Approve, Chair.
Mike Lewis.
It has my approval.
Richard Lewis.
Approval.
Paulette Smith.
Approve.
Des Thomas.
Approve.
Linda Tyler Lloyd.
Approve, Chair.
And Mike White.
Approve, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then we move on to item 3 on page 85, which is Upper Bank.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, before we, I have an interest. I need to be cut out of this meeting at this point.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Right. It's being done.
He needs to leave himself, does he?
Can you?
Has he left?
No. Can you leave, Peter?
I need to leave myself, do I?
And we'll invite you back then.
I've removed him, sorry.
Oh, it's done. Sorry, it's done.
Right.
Sorry, Andrew.
No worries. Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a variation of condition to extend the trigger point for the construction of a permanent access at the Upper Bank site in Pentreth. I'm just going to refer members to the update sheet. The agent has written in and requested that the following points be brought to members' attention to provide context and reassurance. So I'll just read these out for the benefit of members of the public, seeing as they don't have the item sheet. A, the report explains that there have been several variations to the original planning permission. There is, of course, a considerable context to this, not least the need for additional land acquisition, unknown physical constraints, and services, utility, other elements that were unknown and unidentified at the point of purchase, which all required significant reworking of proposals and changes, etc. These changes were not, of course, the applicant's making or even desired by them, rather necessitated to be undertaken in order to bring forward a deliverable scheme. B. In terms of the inability to construct a permanent access, the timescales for this and the uncertainty over its provision, it is considered key to stress that there is a contractual obligation from the developer with the council to construct the new permanent access and other services such as the pumping station. Moreover, this obligation is secured by the deposit of the £750,000 cash bond held by the council. Clearly, all this provides absolute certainty that a permanent solution will be provided and secured. Moreover, it is clearly in the applicant's interest to facilitate this provision as soon as practically possible, not least as this will see the return of the substantial cash bond currently deposited with the authority. And C, the local highways authority does not object to the proposals. So if you can go to the site plan, please, Ian. The application has been reported to planning committees. The site exceeds 2 hectares. The red edge is the permanent access proposed, with the light blue showing the original scheme and the green showing the additional permitted development. 149 dwellings have been permitted under the original scheme and a further 107 on the subsequent scheme. If you can go to the next one, please, Ian. This shows the temporary access plan, which was the most recently approved trigger point for the temporary access is 147 dwellings. The applicant sought to extend this to 201 dwellings, but that is outside the scope of the outline permission, as I said, because it's 2 permissions on this site. So they've sought to amend the trigger to complete the permanent access until the 30th of April 2021. With the red hatching shows the pedestrian pavements and the crossing. The green hatching shows the pedestrian crossing itself, and the blue shows the extent of the previously approved temporary access road. So as a Section 73 application, there have been no objections to the proposals, and the local highways authority have no objections. They have commented that the crossing works should be implemented between May and July 2020, with a programme commission date of the week commencing the 27th of July this year, which would be conditioned, and I understand that has been programmed, and the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much. Any members wish to speak? Any questions?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah, Michael White. Lewis.
Yes, could the officer confirm the amount of money that has been deposited for completion of this area if the company go bust, basically?
Yes, certainly. As far as I'm aware, as I said, the applicant has written in to say that there is 750,000 in cash with the authority. I understand since preparing the note, I've spoken with the council's legal officer, that there is something in the region of £450,000 in cash and a further 300,000 assurity as part of the Section 278 works, which is what they're saying the £750,000 in cash is. So it's not all in cash, but there is an assurity on the Section 278 works. And I don't know whether the legal officer wants to comment any further on that, because as I said, he's brought this to my attention.
Okay. Jonathan, did you want to add anything?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah, that is correct. The 750,000 is split between the 450,000 in cash and 300,000 as part of the Section 278 agreement, which also has all the enforcement provisions the council would have then to enforce the works if they weren't carried out by the developer. This was agreed as part of the land deal with the council.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak? No? Okay, sure. Right, then you can see the recommendation there again on page 91 is of approval. We will now go through the list again.
Councillor Pollard.
Approve.
Cyril Lanson.
Approved, Chair.
Will Evans.
Approved, Chair.
Louise Gibbard.
Yes, approve.
Mary Jones.
Approved, Chair.
Mike Lewis.
Yes, approved.
Richard Lewis. Councillor Richard Lewis.
No.
That is not.
Approval. Paulette Smith. Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith on mute.
Oh, can you unmute, please, Paulette?
Sorry. Approved, Chair.
Thank you.
Des Thomas.
Approve.
Linda Tyler Lloyd.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you.
And Mike White.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Richard.
He did. Okay. Right, thank you.
There's
Okay.
11, yes, it's unanimous.
Oh, yeah. Right, thank you very much, and we can invite Peter. Peter? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome back. And
Thank you very much.
on to item 4 now, then there's the Kingsway, 71 to 73 the Kingsway. It's Liam, is it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll introduce this item. 71 to 73 the Kingsway. It's reported to committee for decision as it constitutes a major development. It's met the threshold in the Constitution. So there's no real updates to add to the report before you. The application relates to the construction of the proposed digital village on the site previously occupied by the Ymca nightclub. It's been developed by the council as part of the Swansea Bay City Deal Regeneration Project with a brief to deliver tech-focused, flexible office space and amenities. So in terms of location, you've got the site plan there before you. The site there gives the frontage to the Kingsway at its northern section, opposite the existing NCP car park. The eastern edge of the site then is defined by the side elevation of 70 the Kingsway and the edge of Picton Lane's parking area, so the parking area to the rear. The western edge then of the site is formed by the rear boundaries of the Picton Arcade, and then the site extends to the south, including the Picton Lane service lane and the former area of buildings at 232 to 233 Oxford Street. You'll see where the red line sort of kinks downwards to the south, connecting into Oxford Street. So those buildings have previously been demolished. The site in terms of length is approximately 75 metres along the Kingsway frontage, approximately 50 metres deep, then with that connection to the Kingsway, to Oxford Street, sorry, of 39 metres. So the overall objective of the application put before us was to deliver a flexible digital environment that would act as a catalyst and example for future development. The proposal will create a new building on the site containing approximately 10,000 square metres gross internal area, including 2 basement levels and Class B1 business space on 4 upper floors. So note there is an error on page 101 of your report which refers to 100 square metres, but there's one too many zeros on that, so it's a typo there. So in terms of the purpose of the development, it looks to provide a high quality office accommodation, as touched upon, space for innovative technology businesses, new startup companies, to almost stimulate regeneration of the Kingsway and the City Bay region as a whole. So you'll note in the report that there's a long description to the development. It sets out the mix of uses to be contained within the building, but primarily focused on that flexible office space. There are other uses then, including retail on the ground floor, basement use, particularly potentially as a gym area, exhibition, event hall space, things like that. So in terms of the material planning considerations, as set out in the report, the first one is the principle of development. Regard needs to be given to development plan policy. Then there are rising placemaking and urban design impacts to consider. So that's the visual form, creation of place, heritage impacts in terms of the heritage assets in the city, highway impacts, and then environmental and drainage issues. So dealing firstly with the principle of development, the site within the LDP is allocated SDJ, Swansea Central Area is allocated for a range of regeneration projects. the overall aim of creating a vibrant, distinctive central area that capitalises on its unique asset to become a destination of regional significance, really. The LDP includes proposals for high quality retail and leisure-led scheme, mixed-use waterfront development, and then other things including the 856 homes, etc. So the policy itself sets out placemaking principles for the Kingsway. It makes specific reference to the site, and it says, I'll just quote it, it says, redevelop the former Oceana building, an employment-led development to act as a catalyst, the regeneration of the Kingsway as a new business district and an area that supports a range of opportunities for city living, working and learning. And then a second aspect then about reviewing traffic arrangements and public realm on the Kingsway, works of which we all know is already started and is in full flow. So the accompanying plan for site SDJ identifies the site for mixed use development, acting as that catalyst building, providing new active travel connections from the Kingsway through to Oxford Street. So essentially this application is put before us, ticks all those boxes in terms of the principle of development, and it's down really to the detail of it. And at this point I'll pass you over to Steve Smith. Steve's going to run through the form of the scheme, how it relates in terms of the placemaking principles. So I'll pass you over. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, as Liam set out the strategic context, I think the other thing I would add is that the council has an overall regeneration strategy for the city centre called the Swansea Central Area Regeneration Framework, often gets abbreviated to SCARF, and that sets out the key themes for the Kingsway area as living, working and education. They're the uses we're looking to grow in this area, as well as increasing the scale of the development. So the members will recall the adjacent Ymca biophilic living project, which was approved, I think, a couple of committee cycles ago. That delivers on the living agendas for the area. This project delivers on the working, the high quality flexible office space, which potentially will include educational elements as well. So this is all delivering on that complete place as we heard, as a catalyst for this part of the city centre. And we also heard that it's part of the Swansea Bay City Deal projects, which is part funding this project, and the key objective is to deliver a digital village on this site. So if we can go to slide 3. These are slides 3 and 4, a couple of photos of the site pretty much as it is at the moment. Obviously, you can see the student tower that's recently been completed, which is further increasing the levels of living in the area. It is a mixed-use area. It's the post-war reconstruction area of the city, which generally has a kind of what we would call like a monoculture of uses, very little use of the upper floors, and certainly outside of hours, it can feel very, very quiet and very empty. So this is all about bringing life back to this part of the city. However, we have to acknowledge there are currently some really good arcades, some really good independent businesses, and this is a chance to further grow that footfall. There's also some important listed buildings, such as the Ymca, which is on the previous view was in the background on the previous view there, which the Ymca is an important community building, lots of third sector organisations in that building. And we can also see the Kingsway enhancements that are now in full flower in the city there. So slide 5. Someone got their mic on with it outdoors.
Seagulls as well.
Seagulls.
Yeah, it's not me. Slide 5 here is an extract from the applicant's very well illustrated design and access statement that supports the application. This is helpful to show the context of this site. So the building in the centre there is the proposed building, which we'll see more visuals of later. And the buildings in light blue show the sort of the approved taller buildings. To the north, you've got that Kingsway, the Coppergate student tower I referred to, and to the east in light blue, above the old former Woolworths building, is the Ymca biophilic living project, both of which have, say, a 12-storey tower element. So these are approved tall buildings in the vicinity. The darker blue colours include further opportunities for reuse, possibly for adding scale to buildings, which may include, I think there's an extant scheme actually, for development above the former Potter's Wheel pub, or the current Potter's Wheel pub, as well as the former Barclays building, which lies immediately to the east of this site. So the key thing to take from this slide, it's an area of change. It's an area where tall buildings are supported. It's what we call a consider zone for tall buildings in the council's adopted supplementary planning guidance for tall buildings. It's an area where we want to actively increase the scale of buildings, obviously without causing harm, but where possible, bringing in those additional, more vibrant, more active uses. And members will recall obviously that the Oceana building that was demolished a couple of years ago was a larger building. It was formerly the Odeon Cinema. I think it had a supermarket on the ground floor perhaps when it was constructed. That was a larger building originally. And going back even further, up until 1965, this was the site of the Plaza Cinema, which was a 4 or 5 story building. Again, this site has always been a large building in this context. So going on slide 6, please. Slide 6 is the ground floor plan of the proposed building showing the context. And what this shows us is that it provides active frontage on the north onto the Kingsway. So there's kind of like opportunities for glazing and doors and activity, and also active frontage wrapping around onto the east side onto Picton's Yard, which could be an enhanced area of public realm, as well as this new link to the south with entrances heading down towards Oxford Street. So that's the direct link to the bus station and some of the main active travel or public transport opportunities. There will be a north-south route through the building, so you can pass actually through the building during daytime hours, and the opportunity to pass around the building on sort of the perimeter when it's closed. Below the building, there's a big basement there at present. There's 2 levels of basement floors below. And what we can also see in this view, actually I'll come on to that about the greening on the link. What's important to say on this plan here is there's no car parking provided as part of this development. The basis of that is it's a highly sustainable location, as I mentioned, with access to the bus station. There's secure cycle parking provided within the building. It's good walking access from all the different locations within the city where we're increasing city living generally. And just off the top of this slide is a very substantial NCP multi-story car park. So if people do drive to this development, they're literally just the opposite side of the road to park their car. If you can go on to page 7, slide 7, please. Slide 7 is just a larger scale view of the ground floor, showing I've highlighted in blue there the kind of public route through the building. It's almost like the route through the Civic Centre at the moment. So you can, if you know where the doors are, but in this instance, they're perfectly aligned. So you've got a public route north-south. And you can see better the layout there of some of these units that could be shops. This part of the building will be the kind of reception for the upper floor workspaces. So this will be a publicly accessible internal environment. It's also worth saying that this is a flexible building, but it also has fixed points such as 2 stairwells, which you can see at either end of the footprint, and they're going to be important going forward in terms of the future resilience of this building, in terms of how this is going to function post COVID-19 with social distancing, that you can have 1 stairwell to go up, 1 stairwell to go down, and you can separate those circulations around the buildings. Slide 8, please. Slide 8 is a typical, I'm not going to take you through all the plans. Slide 8 is a typical upper floor plan, which just shows it is completely flexible. There's the fixed elements of the stair cores and the lifts and the structural columns, and it can be individual small offices. It can be a whole floor plate for one organization. So, this building will have a 60-year design life. And it can be adapted in all sorts of different ways. What you can also see in this view, and it comes through on the further slide, is that in the center there's like a little square with 3 round dots. That's actually a light well passing down through the building. So it's like a cutout in the floor to let natural lighting into the center there. So this building is very much about bringing the outside in, about the well-being of the occupants, about this association with greening, which we'll come on to in the next slides. If we can go on to slide 9, please. Slide 9 starts to show how the greening on the building is going to work. This building has a series of balconies around the edges. Those balconies will be accessible for the occupants of the building. They can also accommodate greening. So this shows shrubs and trees on these ledges, on these balconies within the building. So this is something really, really innovative for Swansea, and it's something that's really welcome and really well supported. We have a green infrastructure strategy for the city, and this embraces that approach about not just planting on the ground but planting on the buildings, which has all sorts of benefits for solar shading, for biodiversity, for the well-being of the occupants. If we could go on to slide 10, please. Slide 10 is the architectural drawing of the top of the building. If we can jump straight to slide 11, because it better shows what's going on up there. Slide 11, this is the roof of the building. This is the roof terrace with 17 trees. So this is kind of one of the major features. So there's nothing like this in Swansea. This is a very, very innovative project. This will be an accessible roof terrace with this high level greening. There's meeting rooms and kind of a event space, I think it's called. So it brings this kind of completely new workspace dimension to the city. It also acts to manage the drainage from the building, which is also a separate process that the consent needs to be gained for. So all the rainwater that falls on this building will be captured into this roof system. It's called a green-blue roof, and it holds the water and uses that to irrigate the planting, and anything that isn't needed gets distributed out of the building at a controlled rate, so it doesn't overload the sewers, it doesn't put excessive water in. So it's a lot of these projects are having to do this, and this is a very innovative way of controlling that kind of rainwater system. Slide 12, please. These are a couple of visuals of the top of the building. So this isn't on the ground. This is a 5-story building, and this is the view on the roof terrace on the top of this building. So these are trees in large planters. They're trees that the species will be carefully selected so they can mature in that location, taking into account the coastal location, the wind factors, and all those sorts of things. So that's what the top of the building could look like. Slide 13, please. Slide 13 is an overview of the building, again, starting to show the greening that's all over the building and also starting to show you the building architecture, which I'll come on to shortly. So this shows that green roof terrace. This also shows the greening on the balconies. It shows the existing greening that's been implemented by the council along the Kingsway, as well as the link on the left-hand side of that image to Oxford Street, which will also have what's called a rain garden, again, to control that surface water runoff and irrigate those plants on that link down next door to where the bakery currently is. So that's to orientate yourself onto Oxford Street there. And what this brings us together is this isn't just a tech part of the city. This is what's almost emerging as a new green quarter of the city. So there are lots of these projects. The adjacent biophilic living project, to which you will recall, has planting on every balcony, planting on the roof. So this is a really strong green defining theme of these projects that ties it all together as a really distinctive, high quality place. Slide 14, please. Slide 14 comes back to the building. So this shows the scale. So it's 5 stories above ground, plus the kind of the what we call the plant, as in the kind of the air conditioning plant, the mechanical and electrical plant. So that's a section through the building. You can see there's a really big basement from the old Oceana, which is being kept, and there's 2 levels down there, which could include a cafe, could involve event space, could involve a gym. And then the upper floors, the blue floors, are the kind of the controlled environment workspaces, where it could be one person at a desk, it could be a larger Ymca organization in there. The overall height of the building is 30 meters, and the general height of the surrounding developments is about 15 to 20 meters. So it is a taller building without being a tower, but it's a high quality building. So those views of that building are very positive. 15 and 16, please. 15 and 16 are the architectural elevations, which aren't the sort of, they show us the accurate dimensions. So we know the building is going to be, as I said, excuse me, 30 meters high. It's going to measure 35 meters on the north-south axis and 55 meters on the east-west axis. But these drawings, they give us the critical dimensions, but they don't do the project justice. So I'll come on to slide 17 and 18. These bring together the greening, the architecture, and the materials. So what we see here is this kind of the architecture that's starting to show this, bearing in mind this is in the more contemporary or the post-war part of the city, which was reconstructed. So this is taking on a very contemporary language with expressed horizontal floor plates. So these are the edges of the balconies, which is an expressed concrete frame, which gives it a very strong identity because it's strong horizontal bands of glazing. And those glazing units are what's called faceted. So they kind of gently zigzag in and out to catch the light and add interest. There's also a structure along the top edge that encloses that roof terrace that zigzags in and out slightly as well. So it's trying to be a civic building without being too austere, and the greening helps to soften it all up. And then the other innovative feature to note is rather than glass balustrades to protect all those edges, which can prove quite tricky to clean, especially in a maritime environment with all the salt in the air, it's proposing to use steel mesh, like a sort of a net for the edges, which is very innovative. So overall, the architecture is considered to be high quality and a real positive icon for regeneration on the Kingsway. And this fits with that kind of the more modern character of the area. And what you could, so if you jump back, what these ones also show you there is the context of the adjacent, just about the adjacent buildings, the way they've been drawn. Bit faint, but you can see the scale. It's taller than the existing buildings, but a high quality. If we could go to 19, please. Slide 19 is an enlargement of the building. They're starting to show you sort of the kind of materials, which include this fair-faced expressed concrete frame, double glazed windows, aluminium framed, and anodized metal cladding where there is going to be panel. So there's a lot of glass, but it's not glass all the way around. And it starts to show you that frame that's enclosing the upper floor terrace as well. And these are all materials that are proven materials that will weather well in our environment. The other thing to note is the greening on the building can all be tended from the building, and if necessary, it can be replaced. So it's in pots there. Just almost wrapping up. Just also worth mentioning the building has a kind of highly sustainable aspiration that it's seeking to achieve BREEAM Excellent, which is towards the upper level of building performance. So that means it will be a very sustainable, very good place to work, very low energy with photovoltaic panels on the roof and using things like the balconies to provide solar shading so it doesn't overheat inside. Slide 20, please. Slide 20, these are some of the precedent images. These are some of the examples that have inspired the architect. So it starts to show some of the colors and materials that I've described there. So as I said, they're all tried and tested and will certainly add something different to the Kingsway area. The last couple of slides really bring it together, which are these are the computer images. So these are representations of what the building will look like in its context. So I've pretty much described all this, but this is the view looking from the south. Looking from Oxford Street north to along this new link that's been formed to where we'll have the access route through the building. You can see the horizontal floor plates that are expressed and the greening on the building and the greening of the link leading up to it. The other thing to flag actually while we're in this view location is that this is pretty much standing within what's called the Oxford Street, Union Street and Plymouth Street conservation area, which is a designated heritage zone. The building isn't actually in the conservation area, so it doesn't physically change the actual character within the conservation area, but it's what we call part of the setting. So it is a larger building that's going to rise behind existing properties and will certainly be visible in this view here, and it's considered to be a positive addition to the city. And because it is a larger building than this immediate context, it will be visible possibly from some of the context of the other listed buildings in the city, such as the upper floors of the Mond building, which lies to the east of the site, which would have had views looking west. And also from Swansea Castle itself is some 400 meters away. Most of it's sort of hidden behind modern buildings, but if you're on top of the tower of Swansea Castle, which isn't currently publicly accessible, you would potentially look across that modern roofscape and see this building here, which is considered to be a positive addition to a modern cityscape. Slide 22. Here we go. Slide 22 is the view from what is currently a backland parking area. So this is the Picton Yard area, which you may recall was previously consented to be enhanced as part of that the HASA biophilic living project. Which is kind of you're standing within that public realm space. So this shows that close-up view of the building. Again, the key thing to note here is that this area will be retained for vehicular servicing, both of the new building, both of the existing buildings, and both of that consented adjacent building, which sits above the Woolworths. But the car parking within this space will be removed to allow for that enhancement. Final slide, number 23. Number 23 is the image there from the Kingsway. So this this brings it all together. This is the high quality architectural treatment in context, the horizontal floor plates, what I call the faceted glazing that zigzags in and out to catch the light, the greening that's on the building, the active frontage down onto the street level, onto the Kingsway, which is set back to create a shelter for the bus stop area. So yes, the scale is larger than the immediate context, and it is welcomed as a tall building. It is in that tall building consider zone. So we're open-minded to high quality developments, and we certainly consider this to be a high quality building. So to sum up, this is new high quality flexible workspace that will bring jobs back into the city centre. It's considered to be a positive addition. It's going to boost that economic regeneration. The quality of the building is high quality. The high quality contemporary building, and the really bold integration of on-building greening, which is something that's kind of really positive and almost kind of unique. It exemplified the regeneration, placemaking, and green infrastructure agendas that Swansea is pushing forward on. And for those reasons, it is recommended for approval with conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you very much. A very thorough presentation. I've got 3 speakers here. Councillor Anderson first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It looks a good and lovely building, and I think it will make a change to the normal buildings that we got in Swansea. But going back to active travel, and we're talking about access for buses, access to the train station, bus station, and cyclists. I noticed on the Kingsway there's a bus stop, but there's nothing there for taxis. Is it, where will the nearest taxi rank be? Because some people will get up late and they need to get into work in a rush. Will a bus taxi be allowed to stop on that bus stop? Because technically the answer would be no.
Come back for that then, is it? Yeah. Councillor White?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question, obviously, it's a tremendous looking building, a real focal point, to vibrate the city centre, and congratulations to our planning officers for designing such a tremendous building. But my question really is in regards to safety. Can you let me know, because it's envisaged the building be used 24/7, how many fire escapes are to be included with this building, please?
We'll get to that then. Councillor Richard Lewis?
Well, Chairman, it does look good, but I worry about it because not to put in any car parking spaces underground in these days is madness. It's no good saying there's a multi-story across the way. At the end of the day, this building should have 2 floors of underground car parking to service this development. I think that to leave that out, we've made that mistake in Swansea for years and years and years. We rebuilt after we were bombed out, and never, when you go to Cardiff, you go to St David's in Cardiff, I know it's a bigger development, underground car parking. And you've got 2 floors here which you could use, and it would actually add value to the building, that for if you want people to work and live in the area, having underground car parking accessibility for the businesses is vital. And I think that it's a big mistake, and unless you include car parking underneath that building, I will vote against it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Des Thomas, did you indicate to speak?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Couple of points. I think it's the glazing that makes the building, isn't it? Without the glazing, it would look pretty bare. But I think it's exciting with the new type of glazing, especially set at angles as it is. Couple of questions. If you could like to explain, please, Steve, what is a brown roof? Is that pergola type things for growing plants? I think it was drawing 8. There was a blank square to the left of the open square. Can you explain what that is, please?
Okay, and Councillor Mary Jones.
my hand symbol up after several, so I don't know quite what happened. I've got a few questions. It's on page 111, and it's about sweep cards, and it says about the refuse and that if there's an HGV, the pantechnicons are over 4.7 meters. Do we have some kind of information from the traffic officer? Because I'm quite concerned if they're not going to be able to access to remove refuse, are they going to be stopping on the Kingsway and causing a problem? My other question is about actually, do we need the office space now? I know it's very, very, what's the word I want? When they, you can use it for multi-uses. There don't seem to be walls. You can have one floor to yourself or make it into smaller offices. But there is currently a large amount of office space available. And because of the coronavirus, our lives are changing and people are being encouraged to work from home. And if these are IT businesses, then they're obviously ideal that they can work from home. So I have grave reservations about the use now of the space, and are we confident that we will be able to fill the space? And my last one, which is the one I brought up about the biophilic building, I heard you saying about the watering. My concern is the maintenance of all this greening. In the biophilic, it was meant to be the residents were going to look after the balconies and outside areas. They could grow their own. But on here, who is going to look after all the trees and plants? Because it looks wonderful and I fully support what you're doing. What I'm concerned about is that, again, we're going to be left with dying shrubs and bushes and people are not going to replace them. So is there a management, a maintenance grant or whatever, a maintenance contract, sorry, going to be in place?
Okay, thank you. Unless can't see anyone else indicated to speak.
Yes.
Sorry?
Sorry. Something.
Thank you.
Am I all right? Am I allowed to speak? Right.
Yeah.
It's just that I think it's a beautiful building, and I think that I don't want to be negative about it because I think it's perfect. And I too have concerns about parking. I'm not sure whether there's going to be anything other than office, use there, because I agree that if there is parking in the building like this, then it is more accessible for those who are disabled to be able to park there and get in there. It is difficult. I mean, I'm quite agile and I can run across the road and park somewhere else, but that is my concern as well, is parking. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Lewis.
Hello, yes. Firstly, I'd like to thank Steve for an excellent presentation. And just to say, I will be voting in favour of this application. There is one thing I'd like to ask Steve, please, to elaborate on. On the passageway to Oxford Street, on one of the slides, you have what's called a green wall. Could you explain what this is? Because it was beyond me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else put their hand up? I can't see anyone else. No? Steve, did you want to come back with anything?
Okay, yes, and thank you, Chair, and thank you for all those questions there. What I will do is I will just work backwards through these questions and hopefully cover them all. So in terms of the person who's controlling the presentation, if you can go maybe back to the view, the overall green view. So I can't remember which one it was. It shows the kind of the building and the context with the trees and everything. Can somebody go back backwards in the presentation? Actually, that one there will do. That one there. Sorry, the 21. There was a question about the active travel, the link, the walking and cycling link to Oxford Street, which is this view here, which has been created through the demolition of some properties. And this route provides for a hard paved surface for walking. And you can see to the left and right of that view there there will be these kind of planting garden areas there, which will include areas to manage that surface water runoff. So effectively, it's like a sunken plant where some of the water goes in and irrigates those plants. But also there will be a provision there to grow some plants up those buildings. This level of detail as to how those plants, if there are, I don't think they'll physically be the sorts of plants that will connect themselves to the building. There'll be some sort of structure like a trellis there, and that sort of level of detail will be controlled. Which will be controlled via the landscape condition. So the principle, this would be a green link with greening on the ground and some greening in front of those walls to soften it all up there. So hopefully that answers the question there about the greening along the Oxford Street link. There was a couple of questions about parking, which I'll just touch on and then pass over maybe to the highway officer also to address. I do know that the project did explore, because it is a big basement, the provision of car parking within the building. The challenge there is it's not actually a very big space once you've put the necessary ramps in. So because you've got to get down, to sort of right sort of vehicular gradients, and that wouldn't have actually got that many spaces. And the fact that literally the other side of the road is the NCP multi-story car park means there's very good car parking provision, literally, a stone's throw away for the site. The Highway Authority haven't presented any objections based on this arrangement, and this is all part of the city regeneration to maximise these densities in these accessible locations, using those kind of major multi-story car parks and that short walk to those end destinations there. There were, I think, there were some questions around swept path, which I'll maybe leave highway colleagues to come on to. What I will confirm is the building is serviced from within the Picton Yard area, so there's no service vehicles stopping on Kingsway. The lay-by on Kingsway will be the bus stop, and the service vehicles will loop around the building, coming in at the west end, effectively straight on from Christina Street, wrapping round through what was the old Picton Yard car park, and then back out again by where you've got the Principality Bank there. But there's some detail there on this, what's called the swept path, checking the big vehicles will come through, which I'll leave to highway colleagues. There was a question about, do we need the office space? Well, this is a fundamental aspect of city regeneration, to get these high quality jobs back into the city centre, and to create a reason for these businesses to come. This is a high quality office development that there isn't anything like in the city. So there is lots of office space, but it's not of this quality, and it doesn't offer this kind of flexible, collaborative workspace environment that would, appeal to these sort of new businesses we're looking to bring in. There was a question about COVID-19, and I did ask the project team if they could help me on this prior to the meeting. So I've just got something that they provided for me, and what they would like me to say is that this project aims to significantly add an increase to the quality of Swansea's city centre workspace offer, so a reason for these businesses to come, and because it's a flexible building, it has that ability to accommodate these kind of, because we don't quite know what the kind of new working environment is going to be post COVID-19, but it's a flexible building. It's got these staircases that allow for up circulation, down circulation through the building. There's sufficient space for social distancing between different businesses, between desks. So it's got all that sort of flexibility built in, and we all know, I'm presenting from home today, so there is a trend for employees to work from home for some of the time, but there probably will be a need for staff to come to some central base at some point. So these kind of hubs, as you could call them, with easy access, quality of the environment, this sort of certainty of this kind of safety of staff in this sort of going forward, and this building offers that those reassurances. So in that sense, it's a high quality building that isn't in Swansea at the moment, and it offers that flexibility and certainty in the post COVID-19 situations going forward. There was a question about who maintains the greening as well. Well, like any office environment, and especially in managed workspace environments, the greening will be managed by the building operator. So it's effectively part of that role. So there'll be an overall organisation in control of the building, and people could rent a desk for an afternoon, or they could have a longer term lease. And as part of that overall organisation will ensure this greening stays looking good. There was a question about what is I think a green blue roof. And this is the way that there's lots and lots and lots of flat roof buildings in Swansea, which have just got gravel chippings and nothing, and all the water just falls on there and goes straight into the water system. And what these projects aim to do is hold that water back, so it releases slowly into the wastewater system, and if possible, reuses it within the development. So that re-irrigates the building. I think if we can go to drawing plan 8, please, Ian. There was a question about a feature on the roof. Councillor Thomas, was this the plan you wanted to ask the question on?
Yes, please. The blank square to the left of the open.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. My understanding is these are some of the light wells, the holes that are cut down through the building. So what it does, because it's quite, if you're in the center of the building, you're further away from those windows on the north and south side. So what that does, it lets light come down from above. So these will be effectively holes in that floor plate there.
Okay, and
so,
and the brown roof.
And the brown roof. If we can go to slide 10, Ian, please. Oh, 11, please. So this is the whole roof environment, and what you've got up on top of the roof there, you've got different types. There's images all around the edges there, the kinds of different roofs. But the idea is it's pretty much, I can't give a percentage, but you can see the majority of it is a green roof, and then the sort of the grey, the two different tones of grey, the light grey and dark grey, are the kind of accessible person areas. So there's a roof terrace for people, and then there's these kind of green edges around the side. The two darker greens are actually the tops of the roofs where all the air conditioning and all the different kind of equipment would be hidden away inside there. So they're the different parts, and then that has all the water retention sort of sitting underneath and re-irrigating the plant. There's also photovoltaic panels up there to generate electricity from the sun. So yes, I've touched on the reasons why there is no car parking in the basement, simply because it won't fit, and there's that multi-story next door. There was a question about fire escapes. There are these two stair cores, and that would be, which have been devised in discussion with the necessary fire regulations, and ultimately that would be an issue that would be controlled by building control. So it's got those two independent stair cores. And finally was a question about taxi ranks. And I think on the question about taxi ranks, I'll hand that over to the highway officer.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Excuse me. Right then, I've got a few points to answer. We'll start with taxi ranks. Obviously, there's a bus stop outside where they wouldn't be able to drop off, but there are loading bays on the Kingsway and alongside the building where the taxis would be entitled to drop off. In addition, there's a taxi rank on Newton Street, which is now open again following the construction of the Copper Gate building. Sweat paths, Councillor Jones. The building will be serviced from the rear, and in order to make sure that likely service vehicles could enter, you would ask for a vehicular sweat path around the building and then back out the other side. Initially, you could see that the vehicle fouled the southwest corner of the building, and in order to provide access for servicing, the ground floor of the building is now chamfered off so that the lorries can make the turn. The 4.7 metres is relating to the headroom of the overhang of the first floor of the building, and 4.7 metres is sufficient for anything that could legally be on the highway to get in there and service both the new building and the existing buildings. And one more, sorry, parking again. The building's located within the city centre core, so when we look at the adopted parking standards, there's no requirement for anyone to provide parking within the core. They would make use of existing car parks. They did have provided a study of nearby car parks to look at how much spare capacity is in them, and the closest car parks, which is the NCP, Northampton Lane and the YMCA, have over 30% spare capacity within them. In addition, there is disabled facility at the Oxford Street car park, on Oxford Street and Craddock Street, all very close to the development.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. No other hands up to speak I can see. No? Okay, so moving on then to the recommendation is one of approval, and we will now again seek your fire, Gareth.
Yeah, Councillor Paul Lloyd.
Approve.
Councillor Cyril Anderson.
Approve.
Peter Black.
Approve.
Will Evans.
Approve.
Louise Gibbard.
Approve.
Mary Jones.
Approve.
Mike Lewis.
Approve.
Richard Lewis.
Disapprove.
Paulette Smith.
Approve.
Des Thomas.
Approve.
Linda Taylor Lloyd. Councillor Taylor Lloyd.
Approve.
Thank you.
And Mike White.
Approve.
Thank you very much. That's carried. And then our final item is agenda item 6 on page 140 is the former TA Centre and Gorsinan.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. This is an item report on the former TA Centre in Gorsinan. In terms of background, the application was reported to committee in November 2016 and permission was granted in January 2017 subject to a Section 106 agreement. The development's been completed and occupies. It's a coastal housing scheme of 100% affordable housing, and this proposal seeks a modification of the Section 106 agreement attached to the planning permission for the 37 dwellings. So the applicant is seeking to include a mortgagee in possession clause on the social rented units only to provide them with greater opportunities for financing the development. Essentially, these are clauses that allow a commercial lender who has repossessed the property to operate free of restrictions which are placed upon individual properties. So essentially, a mortgagee in possession occurs when a borrower defaults on their repayments and the lender subsequently takes possession of and sells the property. So just as a bit of background, this is only on the social rented units, which are obviously owned by Coastal. The housing officer has raised no objections, and this clause is now used on most Section 106 agreements for social rented units, which is owned by an RSL. So we might have had some previously that have come to committee for amendments, but as I said, it's now a standard clause. Obviously, insolvency in RSLs is very rare, and the Welsh Government has advised it would step in if needs be. So the clause would only apply after a 3-month period, which we consider would give us sufficient time for either the Welsh Government or the Council to intervene if required to ensure that the affordable housing, social rented, is retained. So the recommendation is for members to authorise the modification of the Section 106 agreement to provide a MIP clause for social rented units only. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any member got their hand up? No? No? No member wish to speak? No? Okay, no questions. So see the recommendation there is on page 143 is one of approval. We will now again go through the list.
Councillor Paul Lloyd.
Approve.
Cyril Anderson.
Approve, Chair.
Peter Black.
Approve.
Will Evans.
Approve, Chair.
Louise Gibbard.
Approve.
Mary Jones.
Approve, Chair.
Mike Lewis.
Approve.
Richard Lewis.
Approve.
Paulette Smith.
Approve, Chair.
Des Thomas.
Approve.
Linda Taylor Lloyd.
Approve.
And Mike White.
Approve, Chair.
Okay, thank you all. That's carried. And that concludes our meeting. And can I thank everyone for their participation and excellent reports as well. This whole week.
Pretty good.
Yeah, indeed. I thought it went very, very well. So thank you all.
Well,
Yeah.
Right, thank you, Chair. See you soon.
Yeah, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I'd like to thank all the staff there. Obviously, it's hard working from home.
Yeah.
And I commend them for the presentations.
Absolutely. very well thorough reports and presentations. Great.
Thank you, Councillor.